Krishna, Jai, Hare Krishna everyone, and we're back with our reading of the Message of Godhead, this wonderful, wonderful book by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. We stopped on page number 42 yesterday. In fact, the word Krishna is derived from the root Krish, meaning that which attracts. Thus, there cannot be any name of the Supreme Absolute Truth other than Krishna, the All-Attractive. Learned sages have made extensive research in this connection, and they have firmly concluded that Krishna is the Supreme Godhead. The sages of Naimisharanya, at present Nimshar in Sitapur district, Uttar Pradesh, who assembled under the presidency of Suta Goswami, discussed in detail all the various incarnations of the Absolute Truth. They came to the conclusion that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that all other incarnations are either his plenary portions or portions of plenary portions. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is Sri Krishna. That is the verdict of the Bhagavata school of Transcendentalists. This conclusion is confirmed in the Brahma Samhita, which was compiled by Brahma, the creator of this universe. Quote, Sri Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, with an eternal, all-blissful, transcendental form. He is the original person, known as Govinda. He is without any cause, and he is the cause of all other causes. Unquote. Therefore, only if we wish to establish our relationships with one another upon the central attraction of Sri Krishna, the prime cause of all causes, will we really turn the concepts of fraternity and equality into workable means of lasting peace. To understand a little better the principles involved, we can look at the mundane relationships around us. For example, the husband of our sister, who may have been unknown to us before he married her, nonetheless becomes our brother-in-law, simply by virtue of the shared central relationship with her. And thanks to that shared central relationship, the previously unknown man's sons and daughters become our nephews and nieces. Again, all these loving relationships center upon our sister. In this case, our sister has become the center of attraction. Similarly, if we make our country the center of attraction, we designate ourselves with some limiting and divisive national label such as Bengali, Punjabi, or English. Or when we profess a particular faith or religion and make this the center of attraction, again we designate ourselves with some sectarian label such as Hindu, Muslim, or Christian. Thus, we have chosen a center of attraction that many others cannot share with us, because for them, our center of attraction is not all attractive. Our relationships with one another can be perfected only when we make our center of attraction Krishna, the all-attractive personality of Godhead. Constitutionally, we're all eternally related to Krishna, who is the original living being and thus the center of all attraction. So, what we need to do is to revive this relationship, which has merged into oblivion because the covering process of Maya, the illusory energy, has fostered temporary forgetfulness. Therefore, to begin the rehabilitation of our eternal relationship with Krishna, we should adopt Karma Yoga, the first step to such transcendental realization. The Karma Yogi can help everyone to revive his transcendental relationship with Krishna as his eternal servitor. And the Karma Yogi renders this immense benefit to the ordinary living entities who are entirely addicted to mundane activities, without disturbing them in their ordinary engagements. That's nice, right? In fact, as we have mentioned, in the Bhagavad-gita, Krishna advises that in the interest of the mundane workers, they should not be restrained from their ordinary engagements. On the contrary, they may be encouraged to stay engaged in that way within the process of karma yoga. Ordinarily, these mundaners cannot easily understand their eternal relationship with Krishna. Instead, they themselves pose as Krishna under the inducement of the illusionary energy. This false position of supreme enjoyer gives them much trouble as they search for lordship over the powers of nature. But still, these mundaners cannot give up the spirit of lording it over. And when they pretend to give up the enjoying spirit, under the pressure of disappointment and frustration, they usually take shelter of pseudo-renunciation, with an even greater spirit of enjoyment. The mundane workers, who always desire to enjoy the fruits of their mundane activities, suffer greatly under the pressing disadvantages of such activities, just like poor oxen tightly tethered to the grinding mill. But under the illusion dictated by Maya, they think themselves to be really enjoying. Therefore, without disturbing such foolish mundaners in the performance of their general activities, the learned karma yogis tactfully engage them in the respective works for which they have special attachments, but in relation with Krishna. For this purpose only, the learned and liberated souls, who are eternal servitors of Krishna, sometimes remain in the midst of ordinary activities, just to attract the foolish mundaners to the process of karma yoga. The foolish mundaners who have been left perpetually in the darkness of foolish activities, if Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, or his eternal associates such as Arjuna, had not kindly taken the trouble of initiating the process of karma yoga by the direct method of personal example. The foolish mundaners cannot understand the immeasurable difficulties that confront them in pursuance of their mundane activities. However much they may bewilder themselves by the conception of lordship over their various actions, they are always having driven by the modes of nature. That is the considered verdict of Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. In the Bhagavad-gita, he says that due to false egoism, the foolish mundaner considers himself the author of all his activities, without knowing that it is the modes of nature that lead him to do everything in all his engagements. The fool cannot understand that he is under the spell of Lord Krishna's illusory energy, Maya Devi, who forces him to do as she desires. Consequently, he experiences only the temporary results of his activities, fleeting mundane happiness or distress, while undergoing the severe penalty of servitude dictated by the modes of nature. In Bhagavad-gita, Lord Krishna affirms that each and every living entity is part and parcel of him, and as such, each and every living entity is his eternal, transcendental servitor. The natural position of one who is part and parcel is to render service to the complete whole. In Hitapadesha, a Vedic book of ancient fables, there is a lucid analogy entitled Udesha Indriyanam, which explains the relationship of the parts of the body to the whole. The hands, legs, eyes, nose, and so forth are all parts of the complete whole, that is the body. Now, if the hands, legs, eyes, nose, and so on did not endeavor to provide food for the stomach, but themselves tried to enjoy the eatables collected by them, then there would be a maladjustment of the whole body. The bodily parts would be working against the interests of the body as a whole. But by such foolish activities, the hands, legs, and so on could never improve their respective positions. On the contrary, for want of sufficient nourishment of the whole body through the medium of the stomach, the whole system of bodily structure and function would become weak and diseased. Similarly, if the part and parcel living entities refuse to offer everything for the pleasure of the complete whole, Sri Krishna, then the living entities themselves will suffer. The Bhagavad-gita states that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is the original cause of all causes, the root of the tree of the whole creation. It is also said in Bhagavad-gita that there is no person superior to Sri Krishna himself. He is the supreme enjoyer of all sacrifices and activities. But still, those who are utterly sinful do not surrender unto him, for they refuse to accept that he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that all other living entities are transcendental, eternal servitors. Forgetfulness of this transcendental relationship between the living entity and the personality of Godhead has created a false sense of everyone's being a miniature Krishna. Everyone is trying to enjoy the world to his best capacity while overlooking the transcendental service of the Absolute Truth, the personality of Godhead, the complete whole and the origin of all. This kind of fruitive work is done under the spell of the modes of material nature, also known as Maya or the illusory energy. Actually, the living entity has no capacity to lord it over the forces of nature. The living entity becomes subjugated by the modes of nature as soon as he tries to put himself in the position of Sri Krishna, the supreme enjoyer. Laboring under a false egotistic sense, the living entity tries very hard to act like the supreme enjoyer, but he is constitutionally unable to do so, just as the hands, legs, eyes, and so on are unable to function as the complete whole, the whole body. The living entity thus undergoes many difficulties under the pretense of being an enjoyer. So, to get rid of all these difficulties that we suffer due to working under illusion, we have to adopt the process of karma yoga. In contrast with ordinary living entities, the transcendentalists or karma yogis are really learned, and thus they do not work in the manner of the common mundaner. They know that mundane activities done under the modes of nature are completely different from activities of transcendental devotional service to Krishna. Knowing himself to be different from the material body and mind, the transcendentalist always tries to act in his constitutional relationship with Krishna. He knows that although temporarily within mundane existence, he is a spirit soul. He is an eternal spirit, part and parcel of the Supreme Spirit. As such, he remains always separate from the mundaners, even though his material senses, his eyes, legs, hands, and so on, are engaged in so many activities. These activities of transcendental service of Sri Krishna free him from the bondage of work. The personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, says to Arjuna, quote, "O Arjuna, give up the spirit of enjoying all your worldly work, and through this consciousness become a transcendentalist. You may adopt your circumstantial occupation of warfare, which is a duty for you. but perform it in the spirit of service to me. In this way, you will remain free from the bondage of work. And whoever performs his every activity with this transcendental consciousness, according to my direction, without bearing any grudge towards me, also becomes free from the bondage of work. Unquote. The process of bodily self-consciousness, the misunderstanding that I am this material body and mind, and for that matter, that I am a part and parcel of this material world, and that everything in this material world is thus an object for my enjoyment, prevents us from genuine transcendental knowledge. On the basis of this transcendental knowledge, the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, advises us to become spiritually inclined, to become transcendentalists. Then only can we understand that we are nothing whatsoever of this material world, that we are eternal, spiritual entities. By such self-realization, disintegration of our material affinity naturally begins. And the more we become spiritually developed, the less we are affected by the happiness or distress that arise out of sense perception in contact with material association. The false ego, created by material contact, is then gradually vanquished, and this dismantling of false egoism causes liberation from all material designations and renewed awareness of our relationship with the absolute truth. This is called liberation in life. Jai, thank you so much for tuning in today, and we will see you next time. Hare Krishna.